welcome everybody. I can see people are drifting in at the right time. Call the meeting to order. Good morning. Good morning. This is a sound check to check whether everybody is ready for us to start.
Estamos a testar o som. Good morning.
Good morning. We hear you loud and clear.
Morning.
Good. Yeah, I think we have to get started. I can see that we have a good number.
Já temos bom número de participantes.
You want to wait for a minute or two, or we can get started? I see that we have a good number already in the house. But anyway, let me just take this preliminary minutes to seconds just to introduce myself and welcome everybody
Vou fazer a apresentação e dar as boas-vindas
to the meeting, and to indicate that my name is Baitsi Podisi. I work for CADESA as the CADAP XP4 Regional Program Coordinator at CADESA in Gaborone. CADESA is the Center for Coordination of Agricultural Research and Development, Southern Africa. We're a subsidiary of SADC that is created to coordinate the cooperation on agricultural research and development in the region. We are happy this morning to be honored to be given this opportunity to chair this session for today. We appreciate the good partnership that we've had over the years with FANRPAN. And this morning, I'll be chairing the session as following a nice build-up that we had from yesterday. I can see that we have quite a good number of people already in the meeting. I would think in the interest of time, we should start. And according to today's program, we'll start off with getting a reflection on what happened yesterday. That will be done by Dr. Nyoni, just as a start, just to refresh our memories on what took place yesterday. So let me give Dr. Nyoni a moment to give us that brief overview. I hope you can all follow the program. You have the program in front of you, which is showing what we'll be doing today. After the reflection by Nyoni, we'll get the keynote by Mr. Mamadou Nasiru Ba from UNECA. And this will be followed by some panel presentations. And then after that, we'll have, of course, interludes where we'll be having some discussions in between. And our panelists this morning, we are having Dr. Nalishebo Miebelo from RINAPRI. RINAPRI is the Regional Network for Agricultural Policy Research Institutes. It's based in Zambia, and he's the IFID regional champion as well. And we have Dr. Akim Mwape from the Global Research Alliance on Greenhouse Gases from Agriculture. He's been a partner with us for a while in the region and works also with FANRPAN. He's also going to give us his presentation this morning. And then the next panel will be by Dr. Tanga from ISIPE, the Institute for which does research on pests. And then we have Dr. Robson Mutandi from IFAD, the International Fund for Agricultural Development, and later on by Dr. Tom Logiak, who's also one of the participants in the second panel. And later on, of course, we'll wind up the session with those discussions as we close towards the end. So that is the lineup for today. And let me give Nyoni the space to just give us a foretaste of, a reflection on what took place yesterday. Over to you, Nyoni, as we start.
Thank you very much, Facilitator Dr. Podisi. We had a very interesting day yesterday, full of great insights and nuggets. And so I'll try to just give a summary of what transpired yesterday. We'll get the details maybe at a later stage when we are delivering the proceedings. But as you may remember, or you've seen in your concept note, in the concept note that we distributed, the theme of the dialogue is catalyzing action to transform Africa's food systems. And from the onset, our yesterday facilitator, Professor Mbasbanda, highlighted that this dialogues provides a platform for key stakeholders to engage and share experiences, lessons, game-changing innovations, as well as solutions. So that's the emphasis, and it was the emphasis of our discussion yesterday, to say what are those game-changing innovations and solutions for policy, strategy, and program implementation for building the sustainable food systems that we saw require. We were particularly focusing on delivering sufficient, safe, and nutritious food for Africa in our yesterday engagement. Our we had a high-powered opening session where our FANRPAN CEO and head of mission, Dr. Chilidzi Madzivandila, welcomed us, delivered the welcome remarks, and he highlighted the contribution that FANRPAN and our partners in the region and the continent have been contributing and towards the building of the sustainable food systems in the continent, and emphasized the importance of having one voice when discussing food systems issues. He also urged participants to fully engage and contribute during the course of the dialogue, which I should say that it went well yesterday. There was great contribution towards that. And then Dr. Madzivandila also introduced Prof. C.D. Osho, the FANRPAN board chairperson, who officially opened the 2021 FANRPAN flagship regional multi-stakeholder policy dialogue. In her remarks, she highlighted the importance of keeping the momentum going beyond the dialogue of the United Nations Food System Summit. She highlighted that FANRPAN is the FANRPAN network is available and ready to partner and deliver on its mandate. And Prof. Osho then also introduced Mr. Ernest Obi, the head of Agriculture Division at ECOWAS Commission. So Mr. Obi highlighted the significance of the work that FANRPAN is doing, FANRPAN and the partners in the region are doing, contributing to the transformation of the agriculture sector, and encourage the fostering of partnerships to transform African food systems. Our keynote presentation on policy and pragmatic actions for sustainable supply of diverse and safe and nutritious food was ably delivered by Dr. Jemima Njuki, the Director for Africa at IFPRI, and it captured the fundamentals of catalyzing the action to transform African food systems in the continent. And some of the key highlights there were the issues related to the challenges of hunger that has existed pre-COVID, and the issues related to job losses that have worsened conditions, and that COVID has come and compounded issues. Then where the other issue that was coming up was that there's a lot of information that is out there, and sometimes it's divided, and when feeding into government and the policy development processes, these are bits and different bits that are shared with the government to formulate policies towards ending hunger. And this also division also has a problem or a challenge that it presents in terms of consolidating all these ideas to have a sustainable food system. So we need to think of tools and methods of comprehensively supporting governments when towards implementing the national pathways towards building sustainable food systems. Then we had two panel discussions, panel presentations. The first panel presentation focused on the role of the input supply and trade food markets in the African continent and looking at incentivizing markets to provide nutritious and safe foods. And this was delivered by Dr. John Mukuka from Actesa Comesa, and John emphasized the importance of linking millions of farmers to various agricultural markets and investing in public-private partnerships, investing in infrastructure, and investing in capacity building for smallholder farmers, and that it is key to allow for a competitive and sustainable market environment. Then we had the second presentation that was delivered by Mr. Kanangire, the Executive Director of AATF, where he was focusing on the technologies to improve supply of diverse food and nutritious, diverse, safe and nutritious foods across the value chain. And he highlighted the significance of tapping into technologies, and he showed some examples of the technologies that AATF has used in the continent to transform the food systems, and highlighted also and emphasized the significance of scaling up, deep, and out of these technologies. And then this was followed by a presentation that was delivered by Joanna from ICRISIDE, and she was focusing on enhancing agrobiodiversity, African indigenous and particularly on African indigenous smart foods that have been neglected and they often are crops. So some of the examples that we used there were millet and sorghum, and then she emphasized the need for getting agrobiodiversity high on the on the agriculture agenda, and also highlighted the importance of taking that smart food approach, where you're looking at is this approach good for me, good for you, is it good for you, good for the planet, and also ensuring that it's good for the farm. Our second panel presentation focused on smart use of policy instruments. So this was also responding very well to what the keynote presentation that was delivered by Dr. Njuki had highlighted in terms of thinking of the tools and the methods of delivering in terms of the implementation. So here, Dr. Cuthbert Kambanje from FAO, he focused on the issues related to subsidies and tariffs to promote production of diverse and nutritious foods. And he highlighted the importance of components of ensuring that there are components of implementation and budget estimation when delivering or when establishing the policies to be developed. Then we had a presentation by Prof. Haiti Sconfield from the University of Pretoria, where she was focusing on building the capacity of consumers to demand diverse, safe, and nutritious foods. And some of the issues that were coming up here was looking at the issue of policy and the role of policy in terms of influencing consumer purchasing behavior. And there were also needs of the need to look at the attitude and the culture, the perception of consumers, and the paradigm shift, looking at the importance of ensuring that people have right perceptions when it comes to indigenous foods, and that contributing to the diversity of the foods that are consumed. And the final presentation was delivered by Dr. Theo Dijega, who is the FANRPAN board vice chairperson, as well as the chairperson of in the World Farmer Organization. And he highlighted the significance of delivering food, of family farms delivering food security in the African continent, and that there's need to embrace technologies and mechanization in agriculture and the fisheries in order to commercialize these family farms, or the interventions that are coming from family farmers. That's just the little that I can contribute now. In the interest of time, I'll give back to the moderator. Thanks, Dr. Potisi.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nyoni, for such a rich and well-delivered summary of what took place yesterday. I'm sure we can all appreciate of the rich diversity of views and contributions, and also a wide coverage of the key issues with regard to the issues of food and nutrition security, what is being done in terms of policy and the gaps, the failures, and what is being done to address that. And now, having heard about what took place yesterday, after hearing from those different perspectives, we are building on our dialogue now to deliberate today on issues to do with adaptation and resilience, and knowing very well that the issue of climate change in particular is of great importance to the globe and particularly to our region. And now we are going to hear from the next sessions to see how this issue is being tackled or how we are preparing as a sector to respond to this. And just to get started, having thanked Dr. Nyoni for that well-delivered and well-captured synthesis of what took place yesterday, I'm going to call upon Mr. Mamadou Narisu Ba from UNECA, who is going to give us the first keynote for the next 20 minutes, that will be talking to the issue of climate action pathways to unlock food systems transformation to achieve a zero carbon future. At this juncture, let me call upon Mr. Ba to take the podium to come forth and give his keynote presentations. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. I hope you can all hear me.
Loud and clear.
All right. So good morning, everyone. Good morning, colleagues. Thank you, Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. All protocol observed. My name is Nasiru Ba. I'm a senior agricultural economist at the Africa Climate Policy Center, ACPC, here at the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, here in Addis Ababa. And I'm in charge of the Nexus, Food Security, Agriculture, Trade, and Climate Change. I'm happy to be here this morning to provide this contribution. Our theme today, what climate action do we need to take to unlock our food transformation to embrace the net zero carbon future? In another word, greening our food system and at the same time making them achieve our food and nutrition security. Food and agricultural system may follow alternative pathway depending on the evolution of a variety of factors such as population growth, dietary choices, technological progresses, income distribution, the state and use of natural resources, climatic change, and effort to prevent and resolve conflicts. These pathways can and will be impacted by strategic choices and policy decisions. Swift and purposeful action are needed to ensure the sustainability of food and agricultural system in the long run. The future is uncertain, but to act now, we need a good sense of what the world may look like under potentially a different pathway. According to our colleague, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the UN SG envoy for the recently organized UN Food Summit, and also she's a president of AGRA, I quote, "There is no net zero pathway for communities and countries without transformation of our food system. There is no end to chronic hunger, the cost of nutrition deficit, or the challenges of an unhealthy diet without bold action to change. There is no route to better livelihood and greater gender equality unless we start to pay farmers farm workers fairly. And we need to do this while respecting regional, local, and cultural drivers of our food system. There is not one single answer which will transform our food system, but where there is a will, there must be a way." I end quote. According to UNEP, food system, which gather all the elements and activities that relate to the production, processing, storing, distribution, preparation, and consumption of food account for up to 37% of all greenhouse emission. Therefore, continuing on a business as usual trajectory will single-handedly exhaust the 1.5 degree compatible emission budget of all sectors. Some are even questioning if
I think you've frozen from my end. I don't know whether it's only from my end.
I think it's from his end, Dr. Potisi.
And at some point I was wondering whether he had a presentation PowerPoint, but that's fine. Looks like we've lost Mr. Ba. Kanto, it looks like we've lost him. Yes, and actually at one point I was wondering whether he would put up a PowerPoint, whether he's just talking without from notes, without any presentation slides.
I think he's speaking to his notes,
Okay.
Dr. Potisi. We've lost him. Not sure if he's back.
Apologies, we're trying to get Mr. Ba back.
Maybe we can give it a minute just to see if he can be back, and then we will see how it goes. Yes, he's joining now. He's back.
Wonderful to hear. Mr. Ba? So Kanto, you will also alert me. Yeah, there he is. Welcome back. Welcome back, Mr. Ba. You are muted. You are muted that side.
okay,
Yes.
How about now?
I know I didn't even ask you whether you had any slides, but that's fine. You can continue. We can hear you now.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know if this was my side. I'm sitting in my office at UNECA, so the connection should be nice, but you never know. All right. I was saying that 89% of the NDCs are mentioning the agricultural production, but they barely mention the emission targets in agriculture. And those are mainly included in a wider land use targets. More notably, other action in the food system, such as reducing food loss and waste, or shifting to more sustainable diets, are widely ignored in the NDCs. These areas are most often overlooked in most agricultural and food system planning and design. According to FAO, Food and Nutrition Security Report of 2018, which was actually done with my division here, the pace at which food is produced and the pace we are reducing nutrition is not good enough to achieve the SDG for zero hunger. FAO most recent estimate indicate that 821 million, approximately 1 out of every 9 people in the world were undernourished in 2017. Worse, still after a prolonged decline, both the absolute number and undernourished people and the prevalence of undernourishment have started increasing again, signaling a possible reversal of trend. At the same time, food insecurity is contributing to undernutrition, as well as overweight and obesity. and high rates of this form of malnutrition coexist in many countries. And in terms of climate targets, our society has not taken the action necessary to limit global warming to 2 degrees, let alone 1.5. With current policies and revised NDCs that have been mentioned earlier, we may only achieve probably a disastrous 3.1 up to 3.7 warmer, according to some recent climate reports. On the other hand, the number of climate-related natural disasters and weather-related extreme events are climbing at an alarming rate, with significant economic and health impacts, especially for most vulnerable populations. Those are extreme events such as drought, flood, heat waves. They are becoming more frequent and intense. In 2018 alone, climate disaster directly affected nearly 30 million people and caused several thousand deaths. Growing season climate factor, including mean climate as well as climate extreme, explain 20 to 50% of variance of yield anomaly and 18% to 40% of variance attributed to climate extremes. Ladies and gentlemen, our current food system are failing us in many ways. The food system inability to produce greater quantity of food to feed the growing population, inability to meet nutritional needs, inability to benefit everyone equally and equitably. There is certainly enough food to feed everyone, but access is still a problem, and at which cost? And the fourth point is inability to adapt to climate change so that to avoid negative impact of food system on the environment and natural resources. It is a fact that climate change is increasingly having severe negative impact on food systems, while food systems themselves are part of the problem through indirectly or direct emission of greenhouse gas. Industrial agriculture produces mainly commodity crops, which are then used in a wide variety of inexpensive, calorie-dense, and widely available food. Consequently, 60% of all dietary energy is derived from just 3 crops: rice, maize, and wheat. Although it has effectively lowered the proportion of people suffering from hunger, this calorie-based approach and energy-intensive process fails to meet nutritional recommendations, such as those for the consumption of fruit, vegetable, and pulses. The popularity of processed food, packaged and ready food has increased in almost all communities. Worldwide obesity is also on the rise in many suffers from preventable diseases. The current food system impact on climate change between 2000 and 2010 has drove agriculture, 80% of deforestation worldwide, 20 to 30% of total greenhouse emission are attributed to food systems, 10 to 12% from crop and livestock activity from farms, land use and land use change, and 5% supply chain. So the need to change if we want to embrace the carbon food zero is there. Food system inequalities, Africa need adaptation on a large scale. There will be, according to CGR, over 5 million small-scale agriculture producers in 2030. But we are not on to build their resilience within a decade to greater frequencies and intensity of extreme weather. What does this leave us? Business as usual is not acceptable. Then climate smart agriculture must kick in at the production level. When I say climate smart agriculture, increase production and income, enhance resilience of livelihood and ecosystem, and reducing and removing greenhouse gas. Although small farms make up 72% of all farms, they occupy just 8% of all agricultural lands. In contrast, the large farm, the polluters, which account only for 1% of the world farm, occupy more than 65% of the land. So, on the other hand, the food supply chain, food that is affordable to poor, may be from those giant food producers and maybe energy dense and most often nutrition poor. So, ladies and gentlemen, what do we need to unlock? What do we need to do to unlock our food system transformation so that they achieve a carbon zero future? They go through that trend. Policymakers can contribute to achieving climate goal and limiting global warming by making more specific commitment to transforming national food systems. Also, enhancing the NDCs for food system by including element of reduction of greenhouse gas is another recommendation. Reducing food loss and improve nutrition diet should be added to national climate plans. Studies have proven that policymakers can improve their mitigation and adaptation contribution from food system by as much as 25% that way. Under the 2015 Paris Agreement, countries are expected to revise and submit their NDCs, every 5 years. This year, therefore, policymakers have the opportunity to adapt food system solution and set more ambitious targets and measure to reduce greenhouse gas and in turn improve biodiversity, food security, and public health. Without action and how to produce and consume food, we cannot achieve our climate biodiversity goal, and which are the foundation to achieve food security, to prevent emergence of diseases, etc. I want to mention here the pandemic that we are living now. The pandemic has exposed the fragility of our food supply system, from complex value chains to impact our ecosystem. But it has also demonstrated that business and people are ready to build back better and forward. This crisis offers us a chance to radically rethink how we produce and we consume food. For example, reorienting consumption by having food waste and catalyzing a shift toward more plant-rich diet is also a powerful climate mitigation tool to take advantage of. It is up to us to seize this opportunity and put sustainable food system at the heart of green recovery. We must reduce greenhouse gas emission in our food system value chain. Reducing land use change and conversion of natural habitat, which will reduce emission by 4.6 gigaton per year. Comparably, reducing food loss and waste can account for 8% of all greenhouse gases emission and reduce 4.5 gigaton of CO2 per year. Food systems are a neglected mitigation opportunity. And there is rarely any mitigation opportunity with so many sustainable development benefits. Eliminating excessive meat consumption, the way we are raising livestock, the way we are doing our storage, those can change for better, and save emission of the greenhouse gas. Shifting to regenerative carbon absorbing production and transformation system and adoption of healthy, predominantly plant-based diet that I mentioned that are affordable and accessible, as well as halving food waste, can be also some ways to follow. As we enter the decade of action, let's make it a decade of delivery of healthy, sustainable, and equitable food for all. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, how do we unlock our food system transformation to be climate smart, to be green? In another word, how can agriculture and food system feed the growing population and at the same time help reduce greenhouse gas emission? That is $1 million question. We take in consideration multifunctional agriculture, agroecology, sustainable agriculture, sustainable land management, landscape approach, sustainable intensification, integrated natural resource management, ecological intensification, climate smart agriculture, nature-based solution, climate smart processing, climate smart storing, climate smart transporting, and so forth. I leave you with 4 action areas. 1, rerouting the farming and rural livelihood to a new trajectory that both reduce emission and are climate smart resilient. De-risking livelihood, farm and value chains to deal with the increasing vagary of weather and extreme events, building resilience at the farm level. Third, reducing emission from manufacturing, processing, storing, distribution, the whole value chain. Use the new technology, leapfrogging intensive use of fossil fuel in our value chain while targeting health and climate outcome. And finally, realigning policies, finance to support innovation to facilitate action in the above area. Food system transformation should include new ways of producing food. I repeat myself, processing, transporting, storing, distribution, and consuming food. Renewable energy should be used in food chains, in agricultural sector, so that to reduce their greenhouse gas emission. But this will be done only through more investment. So finance is required. Investment in a new climate-friendly and energy-efficient technology. However, for this to be possible, substantial investment must be supported, either by local resource mobilization or by contribution from partner. Chair and ladies and gentlemen, I stop here and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Ba, for a very rich and eloquent presentation on issues that deal with climate relevant issues. And you've given us a very rich overview, taking into account, highlighting the challenges that are out there, that we still have a lot of people who are hungry, and that we need to take bold actions. You've deliberately highlighted how the frequency of intense climate-related events are taking place, and that even the food system we are talking about, that it's a problem in itself because of the way it's structured, our focus on very limited, for example, energy sources, and the popularity of these refined foods, which are creating a problem. And the fact that we still have a significant number of producers who are smallholders, who are quite vulnerable, and that we need to do things differently, and that business as usual is not acceptable. Therefore, we need to embrace climate smart agriculture. We have to reduce greenhouse gases. And you've given us some challenges and of course highlighted some of the things that need to be done in terms of what has to be done to reduce the greenhouse gases, to reduce the losses post-harvest and so forth, and that we need to integrate this in the whole value chain, and that the policies, then we need to set very ambitious targets, otherwise nothing will change. You've also highlighted the fact that we've drawn lessons from the past disruptors, such as the pandemic, which has shown the fragility of our food systems. Mr. Ba, you've really challenged us, offered possible solutions, among which you've said that we need to embrace climate smart agriculture. Your presentation was peppered with very the buzzwords that are talking of sustainability and the fact that it needs collective action, the issue of a multifaceted approach, agroecology, sustainable intensification, climate smartness. And of course, you've also challenged us that we need to change the way we are doing things. You've brought up the issue of changing our food systems to a more plant-based diet. Ooh, I think these are some of the bold things that we need to deal with, and it will take a lot of radical transformation, as you say. And it needs policy interventions, as you've said, and for the need for us to frog leap and go beyond our obsession with fossil fuels, for example, that this thing needs to be integrated from production up to consumption, the climate smartness, without daring to repeat or dilute the message of what you brought to us. Let me now transition and really thank you for this rich and eloquent delivery. And thank you very much as we move on to the next stage of our panel discussion. Ladies and gentlemen, there will be a session towards the end where we'll open it up for the audience to respond to what has been presented to us. At this juncture, I just want to thank our presenter, Mr. Ba, for a well-delivered keynote. And at this juncture, let me call upon our next presenter, who will be Dr. Nalishebo Miebelo from the Regional Network for Agricultural Policy Research Institute. RINAPRI is also one of our partners at CADESA, and I'm very happy that we have the policy think tanks who are represented in this delivery, in this policy dialogue, to give us the various perspectives as to what needs to be done, what has been working, and what needs to be done moving forward. Dr. Miebelo, the chance is yours in the next 10 minutes on acting on evidence and lessons from future scenario modeling to inform policies. Thank you. Over to you, madam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Podisi. And I just want to thank Mr. Ba for that rich and insightful keynote presentation that we received from him. So to the audience, I've been introduced. My name is Nalishebo Miebelo, and I'm the Executive Director of the Secretariat of RINAPRI, the Regional Network of Agricultural Policy Research Institutes. However, by virtue of my role on the Strategic Advisory Board of the GCRF Africa program, I was invited to act as the regional champion for iFeed, which I will be sharing with you later. And so I'm delighted to be able to play this role as part of the Strategic Advisory Board of Africa. And just very quickly, AfriCap is an initiative that FANRPAN, our hosts, is implementing in Africa, and its partners include the University of Leeds, Chatham House, and the University of Aberdeen. So my role this morning will be simply to introduce the concept of the iFeed tool, which is meant to address some of the issues that have been presented in the keynote today, and also that have been discussed over time by many of our leaders. And iFeed stands for Integrated Future Estimator for Emissions and Diets. So already we realize that iFeed speaks to issues around climate change and nutrition, food and nutrition. It is an extensive evidence-based and online data exploration application tool that is designed to assist decision makers to identify policy pathways. So take note, this is meant to help decision makers to identify policy pathways towards a climate smart, food and nutrition secure future for Africa. This tool is being produced in conjunction with AfriCap, which I represent, and I will talk about this, of course, in my presentation. In its completed form, once the iFeed tool is completed, it will present data and descriptors for future scenarios. So it will present future scenarios and also the impact that those future scenarios will have on crop yields and diets. And iFeed, of course, is crucial, particularly following the recent messages from the United Nations Food System Summit, which has called on all of us to radically reset how we perceive of food systems. So very quickly, I will proceed to present. Ian, I don't know if you are projecting my presentation now.
Yes,
Kanto?
let me do that.
Yeah.
Kanto, if you can project, I'm disabled from my side.
So during the UN Food Systems Summit, we were also reminded that issues such as COVID-19 and climate change will need to be addressed in Africa, and that we need to attain targets that have been set by development frameworks such as the SDGs and the Malabo Declaration. And I see that modeling applications, digital applications such as iFeed, in what is now a largely digital technological world, where we are seeking quick access to information and recommendations, policy briefs, etc. These technological applications will add value to our efforts as we seek sustainable food systems and resilience going forward. So in making my presentation, you can go to the next slide. I'll just quickly talk about AfriCAP very quickly. AfriCAP stands for Agricultural and Food Systems Resilience, Increasing Capacity and Advising Policy. You can see there that it is pretty well funded, 9.2 million British pounds. And this is designed to make agriculture and food production in sub-Saharan Africa more fruitful, sustainable, and resilient. There are a number of stakeholders involved in project countries of AfriCAP, where research is being carried out from soils, plant, livestock science, meteorology, ecology, political and social sciences. It considers, AfriCAP considers current farming practices and alternative approaches, and also has analyzes the results in terms of yields, incomes, and nutrition, both in current conditions and taking into account the predicted effects of climate change and the future. You will note that AfriCAP is really more about future projections. Many times when we are developing our plans, we tend to look in the past. We tend to look at what has happened in the past and then begin to plan going forward. But with AfriCAP, iFeed, there is a huge focus on what are the predictions for the future and how do we then plan towards that future. So next slide, Ian. Okay, so the aim of AfriCAP is to build capacities for the identification and implementation of evidence-based policy pathways towards climate-smart agri-food systems. And it has various objectives there. And I invite you to go to the AfriCAP website and familiarize with some of those objectives. The 4 case study countries are at the bottom left here. They are Malawi, Tanzania, Zambia, and South Africa. That is where the AfriCAP initiative program is being implemented at the moment. And then evidence-based policy pathways, which I talked about, that decision makers will be given an opportunity to identify policy pathways. These will be developed using the integrated assessment framework. So if you can go to the next slide. So this integrated assessment framework in this case is iFeed. I talked about it earlier. So how is iFeed being applied in the broader context? So there's a huge stakeholder input. You can see that big circle at the top. That stakeholder input goes into these 4 processes in the middle here. There are scenarios workshops where stakeholders participate and generate narratives that then go into this integrated modeling process, where maps and numbers are generated, and those maps and numbers are then sent into an integration workshop where the AfriCap research, remember we talked about AfriCap at the bottom there, that AfriCap research is also brought into that integration workshop where descriptions are then generated and presented online. So you will be able, if you are looking for more information, this can be found on those links that are provided here. On IFEED, details about IFEED can be found on the first link, and then you can read a blog about the IFEED approach here on this link. These links will be provided to you later on. So I spoke about online results that are generated from these 4 steps that I mentioned here. If you go to the next step, next slide. So those online, I think you've gone a bit further. I'm looking for the link. So those online results will be presented at, next slide, at this website here, http:/ifeed.leeds.ac.uk. So that is where those results would be found. But as I said earlier on, this is a tool that is yet to be finalized. And so you may not find the results yet, but those results will be presented in October, which is just a few weeks from now. Next slide. So the AfriCap program has been around for a number of a few years, about 2 years now. And what I'm going to present here are just some of the key messages from the research findings under the AfriCap program. And these are key messages, key policy messages that are coming out of the 4 countries mentioned earlier: Malawi, Zambia, Tanzania, and South Africa. So if you go to the next slide where the key messages are being shown, yes, click again. So one of the messages is that climate change is already happening and will increasingly affect agriculture, food systems, and nutrition security in various ways. For example, through impact of extreme temperatures and precipitation, as well as greater potential for pests and diseases, leading to the risk of crop failure, post-harvest losses, and malnutrition. To address these effects will require changes in growing areas, crops and varieties, land, water, post-harvest management to help build more resilient food systems. These are examples of some of the key policy messages that are coming out of the work that is being undertaken under AfriCap. Next slide.
Shiba, you have a minute to wrap up.
Okay, so this is key policy message number 2. In the absence of adaptation to climate change, crop failure rates are likely to increase and average yields are likely to decrease. To achieve nutrition security, crop production will also need to be diversified to supply sufficient micronutrients to reduce malnutrition. The projected changes in agriculture systems in response to climate change, adaptation, and mitigation will further create tensions between the supply of production for export versus the need to enhance populations' nutritional status. If you go to the next steps, the slide on next steps. So basically what we are trying to show you here is that AfriCap has been doing some work. And there are key policy messages that are being generated from the work that is being undertaken via AfriCap. And that IFEED tool will be key in disseminating that information. And so you are welcome to visit the website shown here, http://ifeed.leeds.ac.uk, where you will receive information related to the work that is being generated by the experts that are working on this agenda. So the results from the IFEED project will begin to be disseminated from October 2021. So look out for those results because I think they will be useful in supporting some of the work that you are doing to either support member states or in the member states. These pages, this information will be useful to you. Another step that will be taken will be that once those results are finalized and disseminated, there will be stakeholder policy engagement going forward. And these results will also be shared with the COP community, with potential funders, and the general public. Next slide. So basically, my role was just to introduce you to this tool and show you how it is linked to the AfriCup program, AfriCup, which is being implemented by FANRPAN in Africa in collaboration with the institutions I mentioned, the University of Leeds, Chatham House, and the University of Aberdeen. So thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalishebo, for that presentation, which raised our awareness about the eye tool as a forecasting, as a foresight tool, which is helping for us to anticipate what might happen in the future, and which has confirmed the climate change and the need for us to already take actions in terms of diversifying our food base by giving emphasis to those nutrition-dense foods. And we look forward to interacting more with the program to get the results. At this juncture, let me call upon our next presenter, who will be Dr. Akim Mwape from the Global Research Alliance for Greenhouse Gases in Agriculture, who will be taking on the actions for mitigating greenhouse gas emissions from African food systems. You would agree with me that we are building on the issues that have been raised from the keynote to say what can be done. Our keynote presenter indicated on the need to use foresight to predict what is likely to happen in the future in view of the challenges that are likely to play out. At this juncture, I'm handing over to Dr. Akim to give us his presentation on what are the possible mitigating actions that can be taken as far as the African perspective is concerned. Over to you, Akim.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just acknowledge the sitting in of Professor Cindy Osho, Chair for FANRPAN Board, and we also have in our midst the Executive Director for FANRPAN, Dr. Shirizi. Let me just begin by thanking FANRPAN for convening this important dialogue under the theme, Catalyzing Action to Transform Africa's Food Systems. I think this theme is quite timely, and there's a lot that could be discussed, but this morning I will just discuss the key actions that are required for mitigating greenhouse gas emissions from African food systems. And I will focus on just addressing what are the key lessons that can be learned from other countries, and what can or should African countries do to build capacity for assessing greenhouse gas emissions and implementing suitable mitigation options. I've already been introduced. My name's Akim Mwape. I am from the Global Research Alliance, where I work as Africa Program Coordinator. I also work as a scientist at the New Zealand Agriculture Greenhouse Gas Research Centre in Palmerston North, New Zealand. I will just, trying to move my presentation. I will just say a word or two about the organization that I'm representing, the Global Research Alliance on Agriculture Greenhouse Gases, GRA in short, is simply a network of governments interested in agriculture GHG emissions and their effects on climate change and food security. The GRA brings countries together to find ways to grow more food without growing greenhouse gas emission. It provides a framework for action to increase cooperation and investment in research activities that contribute to increased productivity, food security, whilst reducing greenhouse gases. Back to the topic at hand, mitigating GHG emissions from African food systems. I think Mr. Ba from UNECA provided a very comprehensive overview of the current context and status of food systems at a global level. And I won't belabor myself to just repeat what he already stated, but maybe let me just mention that today, 30% of all the food that is produced is wasted. And this is equivalent to 1.3 billion tons of food per year. The food loss and waste is associated with approximately 1.5 gigatons of carbon dioxide equivalent and amounting to about $1 trillion in economic cost. Over the last 5 years, hunger has grown in step with the global population. And currently, we are talking about 135 million people at the brink of famine, and a further 130 million are threatened with food shortages. This is kind of a dilemma because on one hand, we are wasting 30% of all the food that we are providing. And on the other hand, we are having 135 million people going without food. So what should be the key lessons regarding mitigation of GHG emissions? There are several actions and examples of legislation from different countries by various stakeholders or actors in the food supply chain that we can draw on to prevent food loss and waste and also reduce or mitigate GHG emissions. But if there is one thing that stands out from all those countries that are doing well, is simply the extent of what they know about what is going on in their food production systems or food supply chains. You know, we are in the information age, and we know the value of information. We know that improved understanding of the causes and identifying ways in which food is wasted is critical to improving resource efficiency, especially in the long term. Another key element that I've noted in a number of countries that are doing well is just the availability of data. Country-specific data makes a difference in the way we address issues. And with respect to the mitigation of GHG emissions, one key challenge that we have is the challenge of how we quantify those emissions. And you can see from just the table or graph that I've just provided here is that food systems are complex and different depending on the region where you are coming from, or whichever region you'll be looking at. For example, in the African context, most of our food is wasted from the production or post-harvest side of things, rather than the consumption or consumer side of things. So it is important that we have country-specific or region-specific information about what is happening in our food systems. In the GRA, we have a saying, which I normally say in most of the presentations that I give, is that you can't mitigate what you cannot measure. So enhanced knowledge and awareness of where, how, and why, and data availability are key. So to be able to address and mitigate food systems' contributions to climate change, it is important that we understand where and how these greenhouse gas emissions arise. We need to know as accurate as possible how much food is lost or wasted, as well as where and why. Without reliable information and without facing this reality head on, all these proposed solutions will likely be too narrow to deliver the desired economical, nutritional, and environmental benefits that we so much desire. At present, many governments do not accurately quantify how much or where food is being lost or wasted, neither do they quantify the resulting GHG emissions.
Dr. Mwapa, you have some 2 minutes to wrap up.
Thank you, thank you. So let me just end with this slide where I just present some of the opportunities that we have in answering the question as to why or what key actions African governments should take in addressing this issue. We know where the opportunities lie. We have all this information, and the policy setting in Africa, I should say, is to a large extent well-defined. But there are some key issues or 3 takeaway messages that I just want to bring to you today. The first one is on having a prioritized research agenda that will focus on prioritizing data collection, because without data, we won't be able to address those challenges that we are having. And I want to make a statement here that every year that we delay the collection of data in an area identified as a critical gap, we commit our countries, we commit our regions to flying blind in that area. And secondly, that data needs to be assessed by people that are qualified for the job. So there's need for us to develop capacities and to call forth the challenge our young people into science, challenge our women into scientific jobs where they can contribute to the development of our countries. And lastly, I think this is a point which was also mentioned by Mr. Bai in his opening address. We need consistent long-term investment, because investment for research and development to reduce GHG emissions intensities has a high benefit cost ratio, which ultimately improves economic efficiencies and reduces also poverty. But despite this, many countries operate with short-term, intermittent funding for research and development. So the lack of investment has contributed to a paucity of measures for mitigating GHG research in Africa. Thank you, Chair. I will end here.
Thank you, Akim. Yes, I think this brings us to the close of the panel presentations, and this gives us a session now where we can reflect on what was presented to us from the keynote, which actually gave us a very wholesome presentation of issues and challenges, and that we cannot do business as usual. Therefore, that the sector, the system, we need to fix our food systems, which is broken, to reduce the losses, to do a transformation by embracing climate smartness across the whole value chain. And we've now moved to this panel session, which was highlighting efforts that are ongoing in terms of using the decision support tools for foresighting and what is being done under the AgriCap program, and also the intervention on mitigation. And the key message there that food is being wasted, and that we can't measure what we can. So that is, we cannot be able to take action if we cannot measure the amount of emissions that we are producing as a sector. And lastly, that we need to develop those critical skills in the priority areas by coming up with the relevant research agenda, and to consistently invest in this area of mitigation. This ties in with the challenge that was put across by the keynote speaker about the need to do things differently and to invest more and to change from business as usual. Now, this all gives us a chance for us to make our comments. And at this juncture, I'm going to request the audience that you can do, if you want to make your intervention, please, you can raise up your hand, and then we'll call upon you to make your intervention. You switch on your mic to make your intervention. Please, briefly, don't make a presentation, but just make your comment or your question, and maybe even indicate who you are addressing it to. Thank you very much for our panelists and for our presenters for this first session. Now the chances for you to make your interventions. I'm looking at the panel to see, at my Zoom to see who has his hand up. I hope the Secretariat, FANRPAN colleagues will also help me to pick people who I might not be able to see from my end. But so far, I'm not seeing any hand. Is there any intervention at this juncture? Bashir, I want to recognize you. You can be the first to take your chance to make your comment. Please indicate who you are directing this to, if it's, or unless it's just a general comment. Thank you. Go ahead, sir. Bashir, you are okay. You were muted earlier. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, and for organizing all of this. I think this is an exciting moment to learn about different concepts in terms of improving food security here in Africa. And in addition to that, my comment actually goes to the rest of the keynote speakers. I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name of the first one from the EU, but my colleague from the IFEED champion, Nalishebo, and just the recent one, Dr. Akim Mwapi. I just want to agree with the rest of the team on food system waste. I think this is one of the key challenges that we have now. Last year, I attended the UN Food System Summit, National Dialogue here in Malawi, but that was one of the key issues on food systems waste, because it's a great challenge. You know, there are a lot of efforts that are going on in terms of improving food security and provision of food. But in terms of managing the food itself, it's a bit of a challenge. For example, if you go in most of African functions, if you go to weddings, if you go to funerals, and all sorts of that, you'd note that they would actually cook a lot of food, but the food that is wasted is almost over 50% of the food that has actually been cooked. So you realize that at the end of the day, these are the same people that are going hungry. These are the same people that we are actually recording on our statistics that over 30 million people will be hungry by 2030. These are the same kind of people. So it also goes to behavioral change. I think we should include some behavioral change initiatives in this aspect so that it has to go beyond these platforms, and that the community, the society are able to intervene in making this happen. Secondly, I just also wanted to talk about climate change. Climate change is actually having a great impact on food security and all that. This is because of change in rainfall patterns, either too much rainfall or not too little rainfall, high temperatures and so forth. And again, this climate change is also affecting the public health system because of global warming issues, and a lot of people are being affected in terms of their health issues and the like. Most of the diseases now in the public health system, they're as a result of climate change. And that actually there is a direct relationship between climate change and food security that we should work in. So I agree with the rest of the panelists in terms of emphasizing the need to mitigate or to adapt to climate change so as to enhance food system security across the continent. And lastly, regarding agricultural biodiversity as one of the measures of climate change, I think this should be one of the key priorities that we have to focus on as we move forward. Because if we don't, the issues of climate change will still have a negative impact on food security, and we still have a negative impact on public health and so forth. So agricultural biodiversity is very much important because it actually doesn't talk on one side alone. It actually talks about across all the different platforms. If we talk about water resources, they have to be properly managed. If we talk about land resources, they have to be properly managed, because all this, they are coordinated in one way or the other. So we have to make sure that they are properly managed, because
yes, Bashir, I want you to make it shorter than that, because now you're almost presenting.
Yeah, okay, it's done now. Sorry. Yeah, so the last part is that agricultural biodiversity will actually provide humans with food and raw materials, and also improve production and avoid all sorts of this negativity that we're talking about today. So yeah, I agree with the rest of our panelists, and I think this is one of the key areas that we have to focus on. Thanks a lot. Yeah, and sorry for taking much time. Yeah.
Thank you, Bashir. I guess from what I picked from you, you were more or less agreeing with the issues, and just bringing another slant that we need to look into the behavioral issues, which are related to the issues of waste, of food waste, which is inherent within our systems, that we need to work on that area as well, and confirming that indeed biodiversity is an important aspect to consider. Is there any other hand? I don't see any hand other than that was raised by Bashir so far. Are there any comments? If not, it looks like we will save time and have a shorter session, then we can progress to the next presentation. Okay. Is there any hand that I didn't see?
Yes, there's a question that was posted by Pedro, directed to Nalishebo.
He's Maybe asking, you can read it out for us. Yes, please read it out.
May I ask how well your programs are popularized at a grassroots level in the 4 countries?
Yeah. Yes, I actually responded to Pedro and everyone in the chat box, but I'm happy to respond. I thought that was a very important question. Those of us who work at high policy level tend to sometimes forget to ensure that our messages are trickling down to the grassroots. So I think Pedro's question is very important. And in my response, I said that, the iFeed initiative has a structure. So I am simply the regional champion who sort of goes around promoting iFeed. But we have a regional coordinator who is employed full-time to work on this. And then at national level, we have national coordinators, and their role is to ensure that they engage stakeholders at national level, ensure that they bring in the voice of non-state actors who obviously include people at grassroots level. So in the 4 countries where iFeed is being implemented, we have national coordinators, national nodes, and their role is to ensure that there is wide stakeholder consultation around this tool, and that grassroots are being brought into the conversations that will then eventually inform the policy pathways that national governments and the policymakers can engage. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nalishebo. I see a hand from Mr. Nasru. Please, you have the opportunity, sir, to make your intervention.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to excuse myself because the annual budget sessions are going at ECA and I need to make a presentation at 1 o'clock here too. So if you would allow me to excuse myself for the rest of the session.
Thank you, sir. I think your apology is noted and you are excused. Thanks for a very good presentation. We appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I actually send it to the CEO, so you have it for the rapporteurs. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Appreciate. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes, I'm still looking out to see if there are any other hands or contributions. If not, we'll proceed to the next panel presentation. I don't see any hand, Secretariat, unless if there's something that I'm missing from my side. But without much ado, let me thank the panelists and the keynote speaker for that rich deliberation on what needs to be done, the status, and what measures or what initiatives are already on the ground in terms of addressing the food system, trying to address the mitigation and the embracing climate smartness in our interventions throughout the whole value chain, and the necessary action in terms of policy and finance, the investments that we need to be undertaking to ensure that we really change from business as usual. So at this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to invite the next set of panelists and who will each take 10 minutes to make their presentation. And the first speaker would be Dr. Tanga from ICIPE, who will be talking to us on nature-based solutions for resilience, mitigation, and sustainable development, looking at issues of biocontrol and agroecology. Dr. Tanga, you have the opportunity, sir, to make your presentation. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me upload. Okay, can you see my presentation?
Yes, Dr. Tanga.
Okay, thank you.
Just a moment, Dr. Osho, I see that you had your hand up. Did you want to make a quick intervention before Dr. Tanga starts off? Professor Osho? I thought Professor Osho wanted to make an intervention, but she has since lowered her hand. Dr. Tanga, maybe you can go ahead for now.
Okay, I think is my presentation okay? I think I'm trying to make it full screen.
If you can click escape first, we want to make it full screen. I think it's on a slideshow.
I should click what? Escape?
Escape, yes.
Okay, it's not responding.
All right, maybe we can try to end your slide and then try to open it again.
Okay,
Let's close it and open it again.
Okay.
Dr. Osho, Professor Osho, as Dr. Tanga is still uploading his presentation, you wanted to make an intervention. You could take advantage of this opportunity, Madam, if you want to make your intervention, please.
Maybe she's muted.
Prof. Osho?
You are muted if you're speaking, Prof. Okay, Dr. Tanga, if we can click on the icon TV just next to the minus slide.
Was that the icon?
On your bottom right.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes, click on that one.
Yeah, I need to avoid this part of it not showing. That's what I'm trying to check to remove.
Yes, that should be your full screen.
Yeah.
Well, I had wanted to give a chance to Professor Osho, but I couldn't hear her. Maybe she decided to forgo the opportunity to speak for now. We can go ahead, Dr. Tanga, with your presentation, please.
Okay, I think I can't, yeah, because I can't find where to. You've seen that?
Dr. Tanga, it's the television. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think let me just maybe proceed to. Is it okay on this other side? Hello?
We can pretty much read it, although it's not on full screen. I don't know, maybe you can still proceed because we can somewhat still read it.
No, it would be good to
in the interest of time.
Just 1 minute. Stay pause. Record.
Maybe as an interim solution, maybe we could request that Dr. Tanga, you could just maybe share your presentation with FANRPAN so that they can also project from there. And in the meantime, maybe we could take maybe the next speaker so that you can really do a good job on your presentation. We don't want to allow this to miss your presentation for now. If
that's right.
Yeah, I don't know whether the representative from IFAD, I saw a message earlier that Dr. Robson Mutandi would be represented by someone else. The representative from IFAD, are you ready? Maybe we could step in at this juncture while we sort out. Is it?
Yes.
Is that Zira?
Yes.
Please go ahead if you can project your presentation if you are ready, so that we would have you where you'd be talking on towards a green economy, climate-proofing investments in support of water, nutrition, youth, and women nexus. And for that, in the place of Dr. Robson Mutandi, we have Zira Mavunganize. Sorry for my bad pronunciation, Zira, you'll forgive me. So please, you have the opportunity to go ahead, Madam, to give your presentation on behalf of IFAD. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you see my my presentation? Is it in order?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Please
all right. All right, thank you so much. I'm Zira Mavunganidze. I'm a climate environment specialist from IFAD. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. Thank you all for this opportunity to present. I'm standing in for Dr. Mutandi, who was supposed to be here with us, but unfortunately, due to other circumstances, he is not able to join us this morning. So I'm going to present on the steps. Okay, all right. I'm going to present on the steps towards transition to inclusive green economy. So here, I've just, on this talk, I'm just going to speak on 4 areas which are quite important as we transition to green economy. So when we talk about green economy, we are talking at sustainable methods or sustainable activities that will reduce environmental risk, reduce environmental degradation, and also that will also reduce or increase biodiversity. So on this one, I'll just start maybe the most important point is an enabling environment. We need an enabling environment that will develop relevant policies, strategies, frameworks that will help us and guide us as we transition to a green economy. So that is quite important. For example, policies that are targeted towards low carbon development and also reducing of greenhouse gas emissions. So all those policies and priorities, and objectives are quite important for us as they guide us towards transition to green economy. So, and then the other thing that is also quite important is development of actions. Development of actions and policies that will help us, that will guide us as well, or assess the different ways in which the different members of the society depend on natural resources, and also develop actions on how we can have financial and social effects of the environment policies. Distributing these will quite be important as we move forward. And also, I would like also to say that effective mitigation and adaptation strategies are also important as well to do with to deal with climate change issues that also impact our environment as well. So I also want to mention as well, the important thing as we are developing global policies is there is a need for political commitment and will so that the society will be able to embrace these policies. So if we don't have the political commitment and will to implement the policies, we might have the policies, but if it's not there, then it becomes difficult for these policies to guide us towards transition to green economy. And then the other thing that I also want to say is that it's also quite important to have an enabling environment with the legal and regulatory frameworks. We need tools, appropriate tools to assess the environment, to monitor environment and climate evaluations, and also social impact assessments. So all these tools are quite important for us to determine our journey or our process, what would be required, and what would be required for us to comply, and what other actions would be required. So these tools are quite important as we think and transition to a green economy. And then the other thing that is also quite important is that as we are developing these policies, they need to be gender responsive And also we need to create an environment where everyone in the society will be able to participate in greening activities. So here I'm looking, for example, women, the participation of women and youth and other vulnerable groups. So we need to create an environment where everyone will be able to participate. So for example, when I'm speaking about women, there are issues that that can be impede them to participate. For example, lack of education, lack of time, limited inputs, lack of land rights, and access to finance. So all those issues, they need to be in place for us to, as we transition to green economy. And then the second point also that I would like to just to talk about is the promotion and development of green financial sector. So this is quite important because we need the resources for us to be able to carry the different activities. So I would say that mobilization of resources, it can be domestic, nationally, or international, are quite important for us to be able to tackle all these activities. So we are looking for, like, for example, climate finance. So we need to have the resources, and also direct investment in major economic activities. For example, agriculture, forestry, and energy. This investing in these will help us as we transition to green economy. And just looking at it, that all these sectors that I talked about, there is high participation of women in these sectors. And these sectors could help to empower women and also to reduce the dependence of natural resources, and also to access green and decent jobs through as we empower them, and also as we invest more in this sector. And then there is need also to enable youth to have access to finance, particularly for green activities. And then the other third point, and the third step, which I've just shown on that slide, is comprehensive capacity building. So we might have the policy, we might have the resources, but if we are not really capacitated, if the citizens are not capacitated, it will become very difficult for us to move in the same direction together. So there is need for capacity building, and it has to be includes both women, men, and vulnerable groups. So they have to learn new skills of the different green jobs. They have to learn how to address the different issues. And we need to assess as well from the citizens, what are the gaps and the needs, the issues that needs to be tackled in the green areas. And then we also need to develop joint programs and to work together. So as I said, that transition to green economy, it requires considered efforts and also everyone being involved. So we need joint partnerships with universities, businesses, research institutes. The research institutes are quite important for innovation, and then universities for also teaching and developing curricula as well. So we need everyone involved in this capacity building, so that we ensure our right direction towards the green economy. And I would also want to mention that it's important that we integrate institutional knowledge skills through policy dialogues, training, and application of different new tools, which will help to strengthen organizations and their commitments and capacities to drive green economy. Then I would also want to say that awareness and public awareness of the citizens is quite important as we transition towards green economy. So various institutions, and so it's important to involve civil society and everyone and empower everyone so that we are all have the same mentality, and also we are all focused towards our goal, which is the green economy. And then I also want to say that it's quite important as well to strengthen the vulnerable youth groups, to vulnerable members of the community, and also strengthen micro enterprises, for example, in forestry, agroforestry, and also building capacity in these ones so that they'll be able to run sustainable businesses.
Yeah,
and then,
you have a minute to wrap up.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm just going back to address. Okay, thank you. I'll go to the last point, that is technology, research, and development. So this is quite important. We need technology, we need research and innovation. So we need to promote best practices, for example, in agroforestry that enhance agricultural landscape resilience. We need to facilitate the movement towards favorable conditions that will enable sequestering of carbon and also reducing on greenhouse gas emissions. And I would also say that it's important to stimulate the development of renewable sources of energy. We're talking of biogas, solar energy, wind energy. So that is clean energy, which is required as we transition towards the green economy. And then it's also important to have for the governments to provide an empowering framework for conservation of the ecosystem and also biodiversity. And I would also say that sustainable waste management is quite important, and this can create jobs for youth through recycling. So this is quite an important area, and also integrating sustainable agricultural production practices that reduce labor for women. We're looking at climate smart agriculture and practices that reduce drudgery for women. We are looking at sustainable land management practices that reduce soil erosion, soil degradation. And lastly, I will say that also providing incentives for adoption and scaling up of green technologies is quite important. So we are looking at, for example, payment of ecosystem services. We could compensate land owners to provide ecosystem services. This will support reduction of poverty and also increase socioeconomic and ecological resilience. So I would say maybe in brief, these are the main 4 areas that will be quite important to focus on as we transition to a green economy. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zira, for thank you for raising up those key issues in terms of the need for political commitment in embracing green economy policies and creating the necessity to create that necessary environment involving the key actors and the beneficiaries in terms of gender and making sure the finance sector is involved. And of course, focusing on those particular sectors, agriculture, forestry, and energy, as you've already highlighted, and ensuring funding is there, and building the capacity and raising awareness and making sure that the innovations and sharing of best practices is done. And at this juncture, as we transition to the next presentation, I want us to take a 5-minute break. I know I've kept you seated and glued to this interesting presentation for a while. As we wait for Tanga to upload his presentation, we can just take 5 minutes to stretch so that we can resume the next with the presentation, and we'll take the one for ICIPE. Hopefully by then they would have overcome the challenge with that presentation. Please, you have this 5-minute break. Let's meet at my watch tells me that it's 11:44, so it will resume at 11:50 so that we can start with the next presentation. Thank you. Well. I think let's call the meeting to order. Let me see. I think most of the people are still tuned in, so I hope I didn't kill the flow, the momentum, by urging for a small break. I can see the presentation was loaded earlier, so at this juncture, I think I will give this opportunity to our presenter, Dr. Tanga from ISIPE, to give his presentation. Please, it's strictly 10 minutes, and I will intervene if I realize that you are overshooting your time. Please go ahead, Dr. Tanga.
Okay, are you getting me?
Hello? Yes, you are loud and clear. You are fine. You are clear. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much for giving me this great opportunity. I'm called Santos Mbi Tanga. I'll be presenting on behalf of the Institute for Food, Feed, and Other Uses program at the International Center of Insect Physiology and Ecology. I'm glad that I'm presenting on the topic natural-based solutions for resilience, mitigation, and sustainable development. And it is extremely important to know that as we talk about our food system, the global population continues to increase, and African population continue to increase at a rate of 6.2%. And as such, the demand for food and protein sources continue to increase. But what happened is when you look at our global turnover in terms of feed sales, it is increasing drastically. And for us to be able to produce the amount of protein that we need about 70% increase in the global demand. And for us to be able to expand on this production system in terms of crop and livestock production, we need a lot of land and a lot of water, but this is becoming unsustainable. And as such, our technology has been to look at alternative ways or support food systems that can help to feed this growing population. And as such, insects become a very, very important target because of its eco-friendly nature, though it has been highly underutilized. And it is on this framework that ISIPE came up with a very, very consistent framework of looking at insect for food and feed with an established organogram within the continent. And this is because looking at the global situation of insect for food and feed, more than 1,900 species are consumed by 2 billion people in the world globally, but yet it still remains neglected. And in Africa, more than 28% of these insects are being consumed by 300 million people in more than 45 countries. And more species are being identified each day. The question is, why are we focusing on insects for food and feed? If we look at the trend on the graph, you can clearly see that insects are an excellent source of protein. And look at the comparison with plant and animal-based protein, you find that more than 70 or 80% of the insects have protein levels way more superior to that of plant-based sources, and comparable and even superior to animal-based sources. And this insect can provide our recommended dietary allowances for each and every one of us. That means it's a very, very viable source of food that we are neglecting. And this insect have also been shown to be extremely rich in terms of minerals like the iron and zinc. And we are actually aware that these are one of the most essential micronutrients that we need for human growth, development, and maintenance of our immune system. And the insects have also been well established to contain high level of oil, and this oil can be used as alternative in bakery and nutraceutical products. The most important thing is that when you compare the insect oil to that of plant-based oil, insect oil has all the 3 major omega-3 fatty acids, which we know that they are compared to plant that has only 1 form of omega-3 fatty acids. And these omega-3 fatty acids are very important building blocks for making some of the essential hormones that we need to regulate blood clotting, contraction, and relaxation of our arteries, as well as inflammation during reactions. These insects have also been shown to be rich in folic acid. You can see that when you compare to some plant and animal-based sources, we have more than 2 to 3-fold higher in insects. And the folic acids are known to be very important source of vitamins that can reduce the risk of preterm birth, and therefore very important for women within their reproductive ages. And also the folic acid has been known to play a very key role working together with vitamin 12, vitamin B12 and C to create building blocks that we can use for development of new protein sources. One other important thing that we have seen with insects is the excellent therapeutic nature of insects. Insects' ability to feed on vegetative material has given them the upper hand to be able to translate or amplify phytosteroids 20 to 40 times. And this phytosterol can be transformed into dietary supplements that can be used for people with dietary deficiency and other health-related issues. And it is on this note that we find that based on the nutritive benefits that we get from insects, we are working towards transforming our traditional products into new generation products that can help to provide a lot of money for our youth and women, especially in resource poor communities. Because these insects are also extremely rich, there has been a lot of willingness to adopt insect as a protein source in animal-based feed. And you find that in poultry, pig, and fish, more than 80% are highly willing. And when you feed this insect-based feed to chicken, they get more than 62% increase in egg production and also quality of the eggs. Pigs get ready for market size between 1 to 2 months earlier, while broilers get higher weight gain of more than 15%. And a lot of insect feed millers are struggling to make sure that they adopt insect-based feed because of this extensive benefits. When you look at insects, they play a very big role in reducing greenhouse gas emission. For example, if you look at the livestock production sector today, more than 51 million tons of waste or manure is produced globally, and 44% of this account for methane gas, which is greenhouse gases. Therefore, we need to adopt very crucial methods of best practices to mitigate emission of these greenhouse gases. And insects play a very major role where you find that they can reduce the manure by between 37 to about 96%. And they have been shown to reduce greenhouse gas emission in composting processes by between 52 to 99.5%, and transforming them into high value organic fertilizers. And this fertilizer, we have tested it and produced value added products that has been shown to increase the production of tomatoes, fresh beans, kales, and even maize between 26 to more than 71% increase, giving better income for our farmers and making profitability when they are used as alternative sources. And so it is on this note that our program has focused on technologies that are able to transform existing linear food economic into a more circular food economy, which is generative in its design, so that we can produce enough nutritious food and provide economic benefit for our farmers, and also protect the environment by eliminating most of the waste that helps to pollute our environment. So our technology is in a system of recycle, make, use, reuse, and remake, make it a very, very comprehensive circular economy system that can feed, that can feed everyone, feed everywhere and every day. So on this, we look at the impacts and clearly establish that if we are just able to adopt insect in our animal-based feed, we can increase the economy of our countries, especially Kenya. You can increase job production, job creation, and you can remove most of the maize and soya beans or fish that goes into animal feed that can be able to feed more than close to 4 billion people, and even alleviate more than 3 million people out of poverty, and produce a huge amount of organic fertilizer, as we earlier said, and reduce foreign exchange savings from importation of this products. And so we are looking at insect-based technology in a One Health approach, where it plays a major role in the plant health impacts in terms of soil fertility, environmental impact in terms of recycling waste into value-added products, human health in terms of the product that produced, like the chicken, the meat, and fillets, and also in animal health as feed. It was on this note that our technology was able to be selected as one of the best, and we won the Cod Bacon Food Planet Prize in 2020. Now, besides this technology, we also have environmental habitat manipulated technologies like the push-pull, which has been one of our flagship technology, where you can use habitat manipulation, provide a plant that can repel pests from the field into a secondary host plant that are not suitable for the plant, reduce the pest population, and also attract natural enemies into the field, while also conserving natural enemies and even enhancing soil fertility. And so on this, we've been able to reduce pest population on our crops, making between up to 80%, both for stem borers and for fall armyworm. And with this technology, taking a tool over the African continent, we'll be able to manage so many pests and weeds that are affecting our crops. And this has been adopted by more than 280,000 people, growers. And the indirect benefit involves soil fertility, nutritious and balanced grass of fodder for our livestock, and also provide soil moisture conservation, making this technology a very, very valuable tool for improving our agri-food systems within the continent. So it's on this note, I would like to thank you all for this opportunity. I would like to acknowledge our donors that have been supporting us generously to achieve all these major milestones.
Thanks for delivering your presentation within time. And I see that we almost missed a very good presentation, which is saying something slightly different and with a lot of interesting ideas about the value of insects as the new type of food. Not really new, because they are already being consumed by a significant proportion of our African population in particular, that they come out to be very superior in terms of protein compared to plant and livestock-based sources, rich in omega acids and Indian folic acid, and even these minor minerals, nutrients, iron and zinc. They have everything for both genders. And they are very good and potent as feed sources for animals, giving superior performance, and as part of the circular economy in terms of recycling manure and generating potential jobs and even intervention in integrated pest management. Wow, that's a lot that we can get from insects according to this presentation. Thank you very much, Dr. Tanga, for a very interesting presentation. I hope it will stimulate more thinking and the change of heart as how we view insects, that they are not just problems to farmers, but they could be a potential source of revenue if we use them creatively to come up with new fertilizers and food new sources, as we've already articulated. Thank you. I think in the interest of time, we are going to take on the next presentation, which will be coming from Dr. Tom Lojiak, who is going to present to us on the role of ICT in agriculture and food systems. Yeah, Dr. Lojiak, the time is yours. You have 10 minutes to deliver your presentation. Over to you.
Hello there. Can you see my my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Good. Now let me just.
You can put
presentation start.
Yes.
But you can see my notes as well, I guess.
Wonderful. Now we can go ahead. I think we are
okay.
good to go.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege to be invited to take part in this policy dialogue. We don't normally work at a high policy level, but a very, very fine-grained software level. We're software people. But I hope in these 10 minutes I can characterize some things we've been involved in, which might give a perspective on ICTs for SDGs. I will do the presentation like this. I will start by briefly describing a project which FANRPAN are doing with our software and explain a general lesson from that project. And then I will look quickly at some other projects using our software and also draw general lessons, and then tie those lessons back to things that we've already heard raised in this really interesting policy dialogue over the past 2 days. So yeah, we're a software company. We produce a platform called Logiac. And what do we mean by a platform? Well, I just want to say that although software development is my field of expertise, I still regard the development of custom software, and particularly mobile software, as extremely challenging. It's challenging to do cost effectively, it's challenging to make robust, and it's challenging to maintain. And that's a big problem. If we may be able to envisage or conceive digital solutions very quickly, but the actual realization of these conceptions in software can turn out to be a cost and time nightmare. So what we've been doing for some years now is develop a platform which empowers organizations to move smoothly from their conception to the realization without that need for implementation. So without the need for programmers, without the need for programming. And so that's what Logiac is. It's a platform where you configure these systems via a web UI, like you're seeing there, for delivery on mobile devices. We've been working on projects in Africa exclusively for more than 10 years now, and most of these projects have been in healthcare, as the screenshot sort of illustrates. But here we are in a policy dialogue concerning agriculture and food systems. How come? Well, of course, health and nutrition are two sides of the same coin. And and this is the project which draws us in here. It's a very interesting and innovative project being undertaken by FANRPAN, ILRI, and CGIAR. And your colleagues in those organizations can explain in much better detail what this project is doing, but I would like to briefly characterize this and draw a general lesson. The project is taking on the challenge that access to accurate and reliable data on nutrition and health is difficult and costly to come by. And that, of course, hinders policymakers in making any progress towards achievement of SDGs. It's the same principle that, in a sense, that Akim Mwape mentioned. He said, you can't mitigate what you can't measure. And similarly, if you want to mitigate, if you want to reduce malnutrition, how can you do that if you don't know where and why there is malnutrition? So this project takes the following view. I will quote from a project document. Households may change consumption patterns frequently in response to changing environmental, seasonal, economic, and health conditions, but projects traditionally rely on baseline and endline surveys to investigate impacts. So if things are changing a lot between those two time points, the data is, the analysis may be unrepresentative of the actual impact of the project. So what this project does is it takes instead, it puts a smartphone in the hands of caregivers within a community with a custom created app, as I mentioned, not programmed, created using our platform. So the caregiver can, him or herself, enter data directly about their food consumption patterns and health statuses. And therefore, the data can be very much representative of what's going on over time and in the dynamic changing situation. So this project uses our platform to create apps which are tailored for the communities that they want to survey. So for example, here are screenshots from the first app, which was deployed in a pastoralist community in Samburu County, Kenya. And you can see that it's not expecting any literacy on the part of the caregivers. It's using pictograms and sound files to elicit input about consumption patterns, but also importantly, to provide some feedback to the caregiver about about nutrition, so the caregiver can acquire knowledge about nutrition and safeguard the children's nutrition status. So they have, this project found, as we have always found, by the way, that people acquire the ability to use smartphones very, very quickly and without much problem. I think some projects find that that's not the case, but I've never encountered that, and this project also didn't. So this project illustrates the following point, that digital platforms can support transformational advances in agriculture, nutrition, and other sustainable development objectives by enabling accurate and frequent recording of events in near real time at very low cost. And I must say that I have never been more clear about the value of this than on thinking about this project, and also actually attending today and hearing that presentation from Aki Mwape and realizing the absolute vital nature of this, of what this project is achieving in terms of obtaining accurate data about problems. Normally, so that's one way which digital transformations can be achieved. Another way is by embodying expert knowledge in interactive decision support systems delivered in the field via offline mobile apps. And normally I'm kind of more impressed with this. People do that with our system. For example, MSF have created a pediatric care system which can support the health workers in their projects to follow best practice guidelines with regard to diagnosis and treatment. And I'm kind of impressed by the technical sophistication that's required here, that they achieve this with our system. And as I say, it's not us programming this, it's the doctors in MSF, and in the FANRPAN project case, it's not us programming those apps, it's the project team. So these are teams of non-programmers achieving this intervention, this digital intervention, without having the programming step needed. So I'm normally impressed with this because of the sophistication, but of course today I realize the value of the data collection, the importance of that means that actually, you know, the data collection aspect of this technology is clearly equally vital, if not more important, than this technical sophistication of the decision support. But nevertheless, the decision support is a second kind of way in which digital technology in mobile apps can be very useful in pursuing SDGs. I want to mention the following, though, that a third way that I would like to emphasize is that we tend to think of apps as, often we think of apps as something that is, they're self-contained and you can download them from Google Play and look at them on your phone. But in fact, more importantly than the self-contained apps are apps which allow people to work together. So cloud databases these days permit systems to be created, and our platform supports this, systems with multiple different apps, with multiple different roles, but all sharing the same database. So it facilitates collaboration between people and supervision. So in the MSF case here, we have app being created for the health workers. In the agriculture case, there can be apps created for farmers, but also for extension workers, and maybe those apps should share the same database. So there are many opportunities that arise when we don't think of apps as self-contained things that we download, but part of a whole information system. And I think that's very important and often overlooked. A final kind of capacity that we could reference is illustrated by this project using our technology. In Tanzania, there is an emergency transport system which facilitates transport when of women in pregnant women in danger when there is no ambulance available, and that uses a triage system with some logic in, but it also uses a database of local drivers. So this is also a dimension that I think we should highlight. This notion of a database which exists in the cloud but can also exist on mobile devices can be extremely useful in such applications. And now I want to just summarize these points that we've just looked at: frequent recording, so accurate and frequent recording of data, not relying on baseline and endline points, embodying expert knowledge in decision support systems, facilitating collaboration, and basically making use of really, big, useful distributed databases. And then if we relate to what we've already heard in the policy dialogue so far, we've got Aki Mwape Again, mentioning you can't mitigate what you can't measure, emphasizing the value of the project being undertaken by FANRPAN. Yesterday, Joanna Kane-Potaka mentioned that transferring to millets and sorghum will rely on the some small to medium pioneers getting going, and maybe there the expert knowledge in a mobile app could be vital. John McCuker mentioned the importance of linking farmers to markets, and there the large distributed databases are basically what you need in order to create virtual markets. And finally, I would like to emphasize that Jemima and Juki mentioned the need to accelerate generally the progress to SDGs. And I think the approach that we've got with our platform, where there is not programming hindering the realization of solutions, is a vital kind of step into that kind of acceleration of implementation of solutions. So I would like to stop there and thank you again for having me here, and I hope that's been interesting, and pass back to the host.
Thank you very much, Dr. Lojak, for your insightful presentation, highlighting the role of the ICT, and actually giving a good summary, which doesn't require me to go over the key points that you've articulated on the role of digital platforms in supporting the transformation in the cultural system, and by giving those real life examples of how ICT is being used in supporting data collection, facilitating those decision support systems, and the collaboration, and how it has been used to collect that accurate data with minimal costs. Thank you very much. Let me thank you, and also now request that we move into the discussion session of the meeting, where I'll be opening up this session for participants to give their views, their questions for clarification, if any. I'll be looking at the sign where you raise your hand if you want to make an intervention with regard to any of the presentations that we received in this latter session, which were delivered by Dr. Tanga, by Zira, and the last one on ICT, which has just been delivered to us. The session is open for your comments. Please, you can indicate by raising up your hand if you want to make your intervention. Thank you. Yes, Bashir, you have the first go again. Go ahead.
Just a moment. All right, thank you very much. My question goes to Zira, basically on the policies and actions. I think it was the second bullet on enabling policy, on policies and actions, where she indicated that on assessing of financial social effects, that looks at the benefits and cost of the environment policies and how the environmental policies are being distributed across the society or the community. So I just wanted to understand from her, how are you going to collect that data? Would there be some sort of a research to collect that data, or you're going to use maybe some sort of dialogue sessions or discussions with the relevant stakeholders in order to understand how those environmental policies are being distributed? Thank you.
Thank you, Bashir, for a short and focused question. I think maybe Zira, maybe you can just respond right away, because I don't see any other hand.
Thank you for that question. I think in response to that, I'll say, like I indicated that this action or our transition to green economy for the different countries, it requires a multifaceted action. So in interaction of different organizations. So I would say that maybe in able to, as we want to get this information, it can be through various institutions. for example, through research institutions or various projects or various developmental projects that can assess this. And I think you have said it rightly. It can be through, for example, research or surveys, or even through focus group discussions, through dialogues. So we can use different tools to assess this policies and also these actions. So I'll say that there is no one tool, but there are multiple tools you can use, and we can even involve different organizations to gain this information. Yeah, so I think that's what I can say. I don't know if I have answered you, Bashir.
I would say, yeah, most of them you have answered, but I think what I wanted to understand is, have you already set that approach where you would say, okay, this is how we're going to collect the data? So from your response, it seems like you're still in the process of identifying which is going to be the best way of how you're going to collect the data. So that's fine, I got it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there any other question or remark or comment? Akim, you have the chance.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question for Thomas, and that was the last speaker. Data collection is or has always been a challenge, and there is actually an urgent need to collect data from farmers, I think, globally. So in your experience working with different ICT tools, what incentives do you have in place to ensure that the end users provide you with the data that is required? Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Lojak, just before you respond, let me just hear out Professor Osho. Maybe we hear what she wants to point out. We see whether it's relevant to your response, then we can take it from there. Professor Osho, please.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I just want to commend the speakers for great presentations. However, I would like to I have a question for Dr. Ribson from IFAD. I know that, from our presentation, it's obvious that they have a framework and a model where they work with women and youth and also do capacity building, and they're also tying technology to it, to integrate green economy. Now, how successful is these models? Because in Nigeria, we have been chanced as FANRPAN to support, in terms of capacity building, some of the IFAD projects. The only constraint I see is that they have themes like the crops they would want to work with, like cassava and rice and legumes. Now, I want to know how this framework works, and if it is successful, can FANRPAN help them to build the system across the African region or even in some of the regional, sub-region, so that we can address the issue of food insecurity and nutrition and, of course, the green economy? Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. I think I'm going to ask Dr. Lujak to respond to Mwape's question, and then Zira will respond to the Prof's question about how their frameworks are working and any room for FANRPAN to be a partner on making things work out. Okay, go ahead, Doc.
Hello, Akim. Actually, we're a little bit one step removed from this question in the sense that we produce this platform which projects then use in order to create systems and implement the systems that they judge to be appropriate. And so the answer to your question, I think, would be something like following. In the case, for example, of the FANRPAN project, the caregiver is motivated to use the system and give good data because he will get good feedback, which helps them to increase their understanding of nutrition and to safeguard the nutrition status of their children. And so there's an intrinsic motivation there to be giving the data accurately. And the FANRPAN team have controlled, have some intervention which controls and checks whether or not the data has been accurate by sending in community health volunteers intermittently and recording the same data and checking that the data recorded by the CHVs correspond with the caregivers. And so, and that has proved to be pretty accurate. So the motivation seems to be sufficient in that case to ensure that the data provided is good quality. I don't know whether that answers your question completely.
Yes, and I'm also seeing the hand of Professor Sibanda, who from FANRPAN probably wants to intervene also in that respect. Prof, is that, am I right to think that maybe you want to buttress the points raised by Tom?
Yeah, yes, indeed. I think, thank you, Podisi, and thanks to Tom for, I know he says he's not an agriculturalist, but I enjoyed that presentation and kind of like knowing what the whole thing is about. I think it was well presented. I think he noted the issue of feedback as a critical thing. You would note that for most data collection activities, whether it's demographic health surveys, which are conducted sort of periodically, and data being collected by enumerators, the providers of data, that is the caregivers and communities, hardly ever get feedback. Yes, reports are produced, but those are usually intended for different users. And the data providers actually do not get feedback. They don't know whether they are doing well and how that data can be useful to them. But the fact that on this platform, we are able to send in almost real time, feedback to the data providers. If, for instance, a child is not doing well, the feedback would actually refer them to a community health worker, would then escalate this to a referral system. But also we've noted that when caregivers get this feedback, they are actually encouraged, and we see a change in some of the nutrition indicators, like child dietary diversity, even the caregivers' dietary diversity, because again, to go back to Akim's note about not mitigating what you can't measure, the fact that they are now aware that this is actually what's happening. They pay more attention to what they are eating. They're now sort of responding to make sure that if the dietary diversity is low for their child or for themselves or the household, they then go and take the necessary measures. And we've seen a change in the dietary diversity scores where, from the time that we started getting this data and providing feedback. So you can see that this actually is, in a sense, motivating, but it's practically useful to the caregivers. And these are people that are almost semi-illiterate, as Tom said. They're basically using icons and pictures. And in some of the cases, we're collecting mid-upper arm circumference data where they measure that circumference. They also take a photograph and submit that. And that is a quality control. In case they make a mistake in reading, we can pick the correct reading from the photograph that they send. So these are all very sophisticated things that people that you'd otherwise think are illiterate can actually do and support themselves and actually get into the fourth industrial revolution without necessarily, the sort of corresponding capacity or education that you'd associate with the fourth industrial revolution. So the more sophisticated the smartphone, the less literacy you need, which is actually paradoxical, but that's the truth of the matter. So we can actually, and we've seen these examples in in the money transfer, applications that everybody can get banked without actually having to go into a physical bank. So this is sort of the precedent, and we're riding on this, these advantages of apps and technologies. But the fact that this app is able to do is whatever you can imagine, you can do and add these platforms onto the main backbone without actually requiring the intervention of a programming specialist. So these are some of the things that we've noted. I hope that helps. Thank you, Podisi.
Thank you, Prof. Thank you for that response. And I will invite Zira to respond to Professor Osho's questions with regard to their frameworks under IFAD, how they work, and whether there's any room for FANRPAN to assist or to intervene so they can partner in making sure they success. Zira, over to you.
Yes, thank you for that question. Yes, I would like to say that in our projects, the IFAD projects, which are in different regions, for our projects, they are guided by a policy on gender equality and women's empowerment. So that aims to promote women's economic empowerment, and by emphasizing the inclusion in women in its programs. So mainly in our programs, we aim to include women's participation, and mostly our targets, we target at least about 50% participation of women in our project. So this is quite, and we have had really activities that were really targeting at women and also enabling women to participate in various activities, mainly just to empower them economically, and also supporting, like I indicated some, for example, in agriculture, looking at practices or activities that reduce women's labor. We're looking at some of the activities of smart agriculture, and then we're looking at some of the activities that we're looking at, for example, energy efficient stoves that will reduce the time for them to go into the field, into the forest to fetch firewood. They would use less firewood, and then in that process, we're reducing deforestation, and also making it easy for women as well to cook with clean energy. So we have so many numerous examples of successful projects which we have in IFAD, for example, on including women and also empowering women. I can mention some projects, but they are quite a lot. In Kenya, we have natural resource management project, which is called the Upper Tana Catchment Project. Then we have other examples that I will give in Nicaragua, Tunisia, and some value chain development programs in Nigeria as well. Probably you might know that one. So I would say that, so as we are working with women, we aim as much as possible to collect data and information, which will help us to assess the participation of women, and also to get some information which will be able to feed into policy formulation. So I would think that FANRPAN, I think, partnering with you will be a great opportunity, because it's something we aim to contribute to policy as well. But I think with your expertise, I think it will be something which we'll embrace, and I think it's something that we can discuss further as I see opportunities of interacting with you with FANRPAN in policy formulation, especially in areas that are required, maybe in women empowerment and their participation in developmental projects, and especially like what I was been talking about in natural resource management, and also steps towards the green economy. So yes, I think there is an avenue and opportunity for working with FANRPAN and also developing this further. So I think it's something that we can discuss and develop further. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Zira. Thank you for your response. I'm looking to see whether there are any other comments. I'm trying to look for hands. I don't see any. I don't see any hand, and that means we are moving towards wrapping up.
Sorry, Dr. Podisi.
Yes.
But there is a comment from Onai, I think, asking for a question to Zira on the chat.
Yes, please read it out for us.
Yes, so it says, I agree with the framework that IFAD has created for the promotion of the green economy, where research and innovation, technology and development are the major players in making transformative changes. However, my question is, how does it look right now on the ground? Are there structures already in place to start from this? Is a regenerative approach requiring, or this is a regenerative approach requiring building from grassroots? So yeah, that's the question.
Yes, I think we can get a response from the presenter. Please go ahead maybe and just respond to that comment.
Okay, thank you. I'm trying to go back to the comments. I agree with the framework. Development are the major players. Okay, yeah, I can say I may not say there is really nothing on the ground. There is something on the ground, especially on our projects. This interaction with the research, promotion of green economy, where there is inclusion of research and innovation technology. So in our projects is something that we have also studied as well. But I would say that it's an area that we might need to enhance further, working with various institutions of research and also developing more innovation and tools. So I think it's an area where something has been happening, but I think realizing the changes that we are facing, especially with climate change, our environment is quite dynamic. So there is need for more work on research and innovation and technologies. So I would say that there is more work that needs to be done, but for our projects, we have already tried to engage and also see how we can go and tackle this issue, transition towards green economy. So yeah, I would end here. I'm not sure if I've answered you, Onai.
Are you answered?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, yeah, thank you very much. I think I'm answered. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at my screen. I don't see any other hand. I think that drives us towards moving to the next session, which is more like wrapping up our policy dialogue. I'm going to take this time just to give a quick overview of the reflections, as starting from this morning where we got our keynote, and tying it up with the latest discussion which we are having after the presentations from the panelists. Of course, we started off well with a very robust presentation given by the delegate from UNECA, Mr. Mamadou Nasru, who really brought up a lot of interesting observations highlighting the need for us to do things differently, because the issue of climate change is important, and climate change is continuing to impact our lives. And furthermore, that we are seeing the frequency of these extreme climate-related events, which are leading to losses and even jeopardizing the status of food security in our region and the globe. And he also highlighted the need for us to take bold actions, because the current actions and efforts that have been ongoing are clearly not sufficient, because we've seen the persistence of hunger, which is actually even increasing, and that the need for us to change the way we do things and ensure that the farmers and the farm workers are actually also paid fairly for their contribution. In the myriad of challenges that he highlighted, indicated that actually there is no single answer, no silver bullet that can address all the challenges that we are facing. Therefore, this needs a collective effort. But he did highlight some of the key issues that we need to direct our attentions to, in particular, the need to reduce food waste and to try to diversify our sources of food, try to reduce this over-dependence on these three key commodities, such as rice, wheat, and maize, because there are other, even more richer sources of other nutrients which we are neglecting, that there is need for us to look at those. We've seen in the presentation here a suggestion, a well-convincing presentation from ISIPE, showing how insects can be one of the solutions, one of the solutions within the toolkit that we need to look into. Of course, Mr. Barr also highlighted the need for us to use the foresight tools to be able to look at the future, to see what else we need to look out for, given the vulnerability of our system, as we've seen and learned from the recent COVID-19. He echoed the need for us to embrace climate-smart agriculture and to take decisive actions to reduce greenhouse gases, and also to set ambitious targets, and more importantly, to strive towards the transformation of the whole food system and the way we do agriculture. We should try to ensure that our production system, our food system, is climate smart throughout the whole value chain, to reorient our agriculture and rural sectors, and by building that resilience at lower level and aiming at reducing the emissions, and to move away from this our fixation on the use of fossil fuels, and to accordingly promulgate policies and avail funding that will respond to this transformation and to ensure sustainable development and investment. We also got a presentation in terms of what is actually happening, especially in line with the AfriCap program, which is being implemented in 4 countries, in Zambia, Malawi, South Africa, and remember the other one, where the iFeed as a decision support tool, as a modeling tool that is being used, which is already confirming the effect of climate change that is taking place. And as one of the key takeaway messages, urging for us to try to diversify into other commodities, which are actually even more nutrition rich in terms of the elements that they are bringing to the table. And we were alerted here about the forthcoming information dissemination that will be coming from the findings of this AfriCap program in October, with the links that were provided. And on the issue of mitigation, we got also a compelling presentation from GRA, also echoing the issue of food loss, food waste, which accounts to about 30%, which can be translated to about 1.5 gigatons of CO2 being attributed to that amount of loss that is taking place. And in relation to addressing the issue of mitigation, he highlighted the need for us to be able to measure how much contribution is coming from the agricultural sector. and that we need to improve our ways of measuring because we cannot mitigate what we can't measure. And he went on to identify some possible actions, particularly in relation to addressing the issue of mitigation by coming up with a prioritized research agenda in this area, and to develop some skills in the critical areas that would have been identified where there are gaps, and to continue to consistently build, invest in this area such that we are able to respond to the area of mitigation. Of course, we did also get some responses from the audience confirming the issues that have been raised, confirming that indeed the issue of food waste is there, and the climate change, indeed, all the stakeholders have indicated that it is taking place and there is need for us to do something, including the behavior change that we need to think, look at the way we are doing things. I know the keynote speaker had highlighted some radical issues, including shifting towards a plant-based diet as opposed to the issue of livestock. We heard also from the presentation from ICIPE trying to compare the potential contribution of insects as a food source compared to livestock, because as you know, because of land pressure, expansion of livestock is becoming unsustainable. Of course, building on the arguments which were articulated by the keynote speaker that our own production system or agriculture, the food system, is also a contributor to the problem that we are having. Therefore, we need to find a way of re-engineering, reorganizing ourselves, even coming up with climate smart ways of doing things throughout the whole value chain by embracing agroecological approaches, sustainable intensification, and the climate smart agriculture to ensure that there is climate smartness in all the actions that we are undertaking. And more importantly, also to build this resilience at farm level, take into account that the majority of farmers, even in the foreseeable future, will be the smallholder farmers who remain vulnerable to the issue of climate change. We got also a perspective from the financial sector as to what other issues need to be considered to make sure that we transform our sector. Where Zira highlighted the need to ensure that there's political commitment so that the policies that speak to this green economy are promulgated and actually implemented, so that we shift towards a green economy by creating an enabling environment, take into account the gender roles to make sure that the key actors who need to benefit from such interventions take into account, say, women and youth, who are the major actors in the agriculture and forestry sector, who need significant investment and capacitating so that they can take advantage of the instruments that are promulgated to support the green economy. That the countries or the stakeholders need to ensure that there's adequate funding in support of this green economy, and to build the necessary capacity and to measure and track implementation, as well as raising awareness and making sure that there is technological development, innovation, and the sharing of the best practices. I want to also submit that towards the end, we also did reflect on the issue of how ICTs can assist in the transformation. And we were given a clear case here of what has been done by the presentation from Dr. Logiak with regard to the issue of software development, how this has been used successfully, even in a study where they were looking at improving dietary health and decision-making, how this enabled the collection of data at a very low cost, even involving people who could have been challenged by literacy, but because of the use of pictograms, made it very user-friendly or usable to get feedback on nutrition. Clearly demonstrating that people can really acquire the ability to use smartphones, which have become a common tool now for accessing information and to deliver services. It was demonstrated to us here that the digital platforms can indeed support the needed transformation by ensuring real-time collection and recording of data and events at a very low cost. And Yes, we are all aware the ICT systems are able to facilitate this cooperation and collaboration. Even now, as we are engaging this the webinar through the use of this platform, it just shows the versatility of the ICT in supporting this. They can facilitate distribution of databases and this accurate data collection, as you have already said. And in closing, of course, I just want to appreciate the good comments that we've had, and that this starts our dialogue in terms of further engaging on the issues that have been raised. We've heard of the new or the programs that are being implemented by the different actors. We've heard the position of the financial institutions in terms of embracing the green economy, the need for us as various stakeholders to work together to make this work, because it cannot take one, but it takes all of us to bring about this transformation. I think those are my brief comments in terms of what I interpreted from the presentations this morning and your discussions in this webinar. I want to thank the Secretariat from FANRPAN for facilitating this work in terms of helping our presenters to deliver and to follow us up actually to participate successfully. I think generally we have had minimal disruptions. I've been in a number of meetings, and these ICT challenges sometimes were almost overcoming us, but by and large, we could hear everybody when they were intervening. I don't know if there's anything that I've missed. I think I will pause here and maybe allow the Secretariat, if there's any housekeeping issue that they might want to bring, I would hand over to you, Secretariat. Over to you. Thank you very much. Hello, Francis or Prof. Sibanda?
Thank you, Podisi. Thank you for facilitating today's proceedings. I'm just trying to check with Kanto. Do we need any photograph, or do we proceed to close the meeting? Any housekeeping you may want to share?
Not on my side, Prof. But yes, a group photo will be more than welcome if everyone can just switch on quickly their camera, which will take me 5 seconds to take picture of you of attendance today.
Okay, thank you. I know we've lost some colleagues, but please, those who are still here,
yes,
let's switch on our videos
video
and put on that smile so Kanto can do the recording of this. While she's doing that,
thank you.
Thank you. Just to say thank you very much to everybody that participated today. And of course, Dr. Podisi, we appreciate the partnership from CADESA, and thank you for stepping in and helping us in this facilitation today. Our last day of the dialogue is tomorrow, which is of course the third day, slightly different format that should be exciting. We're going to have a roundtable, a moderated roundtable with participants discussing various aspects of inclusivity. So we're talking about inclusive food systems, leaving no one behind. So we look forward to welcoming you back tomorrow. And we're excited that, and also we will have, of course, a summary of the resolutions that are coming out of this dialogue tomorrow. So we are further extending the invitation, and we hope that you join us again tomorrow. Thank you, and I think we will bring today's session to a close, and see you tomorrow for those who can make it. Thank you.